we're going to have our first speaker, Ray Yungen. Ray, you know, he's been come to the conferences himself, you know, without being a speaker. Come on up here, Ray.
Good morning, everybody. You have to bear with me. I'm kind of weak in the flesh this morning. I think I'm allergic to juniper. I was really good yesterday, but I woke up this morning and with terrible asthma and stuffy nose, so I am very weak in the flesh this morning. But you're not here to see me, right? You're here to hear my information. So please bear with me. Dave Hunt was right. In many ways, this talk is dedicated to his memory. Back in the 1980s, he was talking about something called the New Age movement. And I had never heard of it. And in April of 1984, he did a 3-day seminar in Salem. You know, for you who are out of state, that's the state capital, at the Armory. And I went to all his sessions. And I was absolutely astounded by what he was saying. So that was 30 years ago, and I started to research this subject. And what I found out was absolutely astounding, and I'm going to share what I've learned with you this morning. The New Age didn't crest in popularity. This is Terry Mattingly, Christian Research Journal. The New Age didn't crest in popularity and then disappear. It soaked into society. Now, a lot of you may think that the New Age was a fad in the 1980s. You know, Shirley MacLaine, crystals, you don't hear about it anymore. So it must be gone. Well, quite the opposite is true. It is very much with us, and it is very pervasive, and this can be documented. You know, we're not talking about conspiracy theories here. This isn't something that you have to trust me on. You can find out for yourself. And here's some books that back up what I'm saying. This is by Professor James Herrick. He wrote a book called The Making of the New Spirituality. Dr. Herrick's scholarly work documents how the revealed word tradition, that's Bible, Christianity, is being slowly dismantled in society and is being replaced by the new religious synthesis, which is the New Age movement. See, they don't use that term anymore. They dropped it in the 90s, and now they just call it spirituality. How many of you heard people say they're spiritual but not religious? Oh, quite a few of you. Well, that's when they say that, most 80-90% chance they're into this kind of belief system. Okay, according to Fuller's book, huge numbers of Americans have embraced what he refers to as unchurched spirituality, which is in effect New Age spirituality. Another book, American Veda. Now, the Vedas are the Hindu scriptures. The Vedas are the equivalent of the Bible for the Hindu religion. And this book says Hindu mysticism has profoundly affected the worldview of millions of Americans and radically altered the religious landscape. Okay, this gentleman here is the religion specialist for the New York Times, the religious editor, and he wrote this book, and he talked about the slow motion collapse of traditional faith and the rise of a variety of pseudo-Christianities, that means phony Christianities or false Christianities, that stroke our egos, indulge our follies, and encourage our worst impulses. So, these books are documenting what I'm talking about. This isn't just something that is being said to, fearmonger, whatever. Dave Hunt, I don't know if you know this, but Dave Hunt was always accused of being negative. He was always accused of, stirring up trouble or, getting people afraid, scared. And he had many critics. I don't know if you know that, but he had many, many critics in the church that were, very much opposed to what he was doing. But as I said earlier, he was right. And I'm going to show you how he was right. Okay, Baylor University is a Baptist university in Texas. And they wrote a book called they did a survey and put out a book called What America Really Believes. And according to the survey, up to 26 million Americans now view God as a cosmic force rather than a personal being. Okay, that would be more adherents than Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, and United Methodists combined. Now, these are all the major denominations that once dominated the American landscape. So now, New Agers outnumber, all these denominations. So we're dealing with a very large number of people here. Okay, how many of you are in the business world? Okay, quite a few. Now, you understand something called the law of the market, right? The law of the market is supply and demand. If there's a big demand for something, somebody's going to come up with a big supply to meet that demand. And you can gauge how successful or how popular something is by how much of that particular item is being supplied, okay? Borders Bookstore. This is the Borders, of course, went out of business. Not for lack of business, but I talked to somebody, it had something to do with their, secondary type situations. But this was the Borders Bookstore in Salem. This was their New Age section called Metaphysics. And as you see, it was pretty big, but it wasn't just that, it was also this. 65 shelves were devoted to New Age spirituality at Borders Bookstore. Okay, when I first started to research this, there was a bookstore in malls called B. Dalton. How many remember B. Dalton? Okay, only 5 shelves devoted to New Age spirituality in 1984, and by the 2000s it went to 65 shelves. And this is the situation in Europe also. I just came back from a speaking tour of England, Ireland, and Germany. I went to major bookstores in many of the major cities, Dublin, Birmingham, Dusseldorf. And in each one, the number of shelves devoted to New Age spirituality was 80 to 100. So it's even worse in Europe. And the Christian section would be like 12 shelves. And this is everywhere I went in Europe. This particular aspect of New Age spirituality is quite alarming. In the 1950s, witchcraft had more or less died out in the Western world. And this gentleman here, Gerald Gardner, he was a British civil servant in Malaya, now known as Malaysia, and he was into witchcraft. He was one of a very small number, and he wrote this book called Witchcraft Today. This came out, I think, in the 1950s. Well, the counterculture in the 1960s and 70s picked up on it and started to run with it. I'm going to show you how popular Wicca has become. This is a Wiccan website called The Witch's Voice. They came online in 1997, and since then, this one website has gotten 480 million hits. 480 million. That's almost half a billion. Now, this would be the entire English-speaking world. This would be not just the U.S., but England and Canada, Australia, places like that. And certainly there's a number of people who were just, curious. But most of these hits were people who were actually interested in Wicca. And fueling this interest is the Harry Potter phenomenon. This is the 3rd book, The Prisoner of Azkaban. And in it, you find real witchcraft. I mean, actual real witchcraft. On page 297, I believe it is. Crystal gazing, this is from the book. Crystal gazing, divination, is a particular refined art. This is one of the professors at Hogwarts saying this. We shall start by practicing relaxing the conscious mind. There's meditation. And externalize so as to clear the inner eye, that's the 3rd eye chakra, and the superconscious. They actually use that term, or J.K. Rowling actually used the term superconscious in this book. Well, that's a real witchcraft term. I mean, that's actually part and parcel of the practice of witchcraft, tapping into the superconscious. Now, people have said that the Harry Potter books are just merely fantasy, like The Wizard of Oz. Well, in The Wizard of Oz, you don't have the Wicked Witch of the West talking about the superconscious, right? So all these millions and millions of kids, young people, whatever, are reading this book and they're seeing that term, the superconscious, and that subtly kind of programs them to accept this. So what exactly is mysticism? Well, mysticism is a direct experience of the supernatural. It's very subjective. There's no way you can really verify whether you're actually getting God. But it's not just intellectual. You have to really understand this. What we're dealing with is not just like right-wing, left-wing politics. This is becoming connected to a supernatural force. Now, I want you to really see this picture. This picture kind of says it all. If you understand this picture, then you understand the whole talk. This is someone who, this force, this energy is coming down and possessing them. See, you're not going to think you're God unless you feel like you're God. If this is just intellectual, like Frank Peretti, I heard a recording he did once, and he's kind of humorous, and he he's supposed to be God, and he says, "Hey Gabriel, come over here, look at this." And then he does this little voice, "I am God, I am God," and Shirley MacLaine, going, "I am God," and everybody starts laughing, but they didn't understand that this wasn't just intellectual. This is when you just don't think you're God, you actually are possessed by a supernatural force that leads you to believe you're God. So without this practice, there really is no New Age spirituality. And that is done through 3 different ways, basically. Reciting a mantra, that's a word or series of words, phrases, repeated over and over again, or focusing on the breath. We're going to be looking at that in just a few seconds, focusing on the breath. That's usually found in Buddhism. And then the percussion sound, that's found in shamanism, where you have a drum or whatever. And the goal is to stop the flow of thoughts, to empty the mind, go into a trance. And then, when that happens, then, you connect with these supernatural forces. Meditation is the doorway between worlds, the pathway between dimensions. And this is what that means. This was a woman talking about her experience with meditation. She says, "One starts by silencing the mind. For many, this is not easy, but when like I said, I have allergies, so I have kind of a nasally voice, so I apologize for that. But when the mind has become silent and still, it is then possible for the divine force to descend and enter into the receptive individual. First it trickles, and later it comes in waves." So we're dealing with something that is very, very dangerous, very powerful. This isn't just nutty people who just think they're God. They're actually being deceived. Okay, the meditation explosion. This is something that's very important to the talk this morning, that this has become extremely pervasive. This is Time magazine back in the 2003, and it says, "New Age mumbo jumbo, not for millions of Americans who meditate for health and well-being." And that initially was the attraction for many people to do this for stress reduction, what have you. We're going to show now how this meditation explosion came to be. How many remember the Woodstock, or heard about the Woodstock Music Festival, 1969? Well, if you see where the bird is there? Anyhow, do you see what it says? It says an Aquarian exposition. Do you all see that? An Aquarian exposition. Well, that's a reference to the age of Aquarius, which is what the New Age means. The New Age means we're entering into the age of Aquarius, where there's going to be a universal world religion, and all humanity is going to be united. Well, what does astrology have to do with music, right? Are you curious? Why are they talking about this Eastern spiritual concept? See, 3 days of peace and music. What does that have to do with astrology? Well, I'll show you. Before any of the groups came out, before there was any music, there was a benediction by a Hindu guru named Swami Satchidananda. And he told this crowd of 500,000 people that they should stop taking LSD, they should stop smoking pot, and they should start meditating. They should do meditation rather than get high on drugs. And you see, there he is, there sitting on the, whatever that is, podium or whatever, and those people to the right and left of him are his followers, his disciples. So this was someone very much like the Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, who had a center a number of miles from here. And he was giving this religious lecture to all these 500,000 people, or young people, I guess the term back then would have been hippies, right? So anyhow, this got the ball rolling, and transcendental meditation came on the scene. How many of you remember Merv Griffin? Oh, quite a few, yeah. Well, anyhow, Merv Griffin actually was a practitioner of transcendental meditation, and he had the Maharishi on his show in 1974, and things exploded. After that, something like 2 million people signed up for transcendental meditation over the next 2 years just because of this show, because he was like the Oprah Winfrey of the 1970s. And there was a big difference here. See, before, it was mainly, people with long hair, guys with long hair, and, people that were in the counterculture that did meditation, like, went to Woodstock. But for the first time, doctors, lawyers, housewives started to do meditation, and things just took off from that point. Lenny, how many of you belong to Costco? Quite a few. And you're probably wondering, well, what does Costco have to do with New Age, right? Yeah, I bet you're really curious, aren't you? Okay. Well, this is where we've come. Okay, this is the July 2014 issue of Costco magazine, and in it, there's an article called Mindful Matters, Meditation as Medicine. It has been around for centuries and integral to the practice of Buddhism, yet, until recently, meditation was often regarded as some strange, New Agey, Eastern, mind-body thing, okay? I want you to say it with me. No more. No more. See? No more. It's no longer strange. It's no longer New Agey. It's now mainstream. We're going to look at, how many of you heard the term mindfulness? Oh, quite a few of you. Mindfulness. Okay, here we go. There are 3 ways this mystical revolution are impacting the Western world. And the first one is something called mindfulness, which is Zen Buddhist meditation. It's focusing on the breath. And that's what we see here. This is the classic yoga pose, but it's also the classic Zen Buddhist pose. It's called the lotus position. And mindfulness is now becoming very, very pervasive. It is impacting psychology and counseling, drug and alcohol rehabilitation, the health field, sports and fitness, business and success training. And this is something that can be documented also. This is Time Magazine. Oh, did I miss one? Oh, no. This is Time Magazine, The Mindful Revolution, and this is a magazine that's actually devoted to the practice of mindfulness. And this is becoming the wave of the future. Here we have employees at the General Mills headquarters in Michigan, and they're doing corporate mindfulness training. We have all these people that are laying on the mat there, focusing on their breath. And this is becoming a big thing in the corporate world. Any like I said, health and fitness, counseling, anything that has to do with improving your life is being impacted by this mindfulness revolution. This is a book called Thrive. It's written by Arianna Huffington, and she is the founder of the Huffington Post. How many have heard of that? Huffington Post. And she wrote this book called Thrive, and in it she says that she was very successful, she was rich and famous and all that, but yet she was unhappy. Well, then she found out about mindfulness or meditation, and she started doing it, and now she is thriving. Where before she had all this material wealth and success, but she was unhappy. But now that she's tapped into mindfulness, now she's really having a great life. And she says, when you consider all the benefits of meditation, it's not an exaggeration to call meditation a miracle drug. No wonder mindfulness and meditation are being increasingly adopted by corporations and institutions throughout the world. And that is really the essence of my talk here this morning. This is what I want to get across, that we're not dealing with cults. This isn't cults. As you see here, she says corporations and institutions throughout the world. Now, institutions, that's schools, that's hospitals, that's, everything under the sun. So in essence, I know this sounds radical. Tom was talking about, some things that are controversial. But in essence, through the 3 things we're going to see this morning, it's like society is becoming one giant cult, one enormous cult, based on what's being absorbed here. See, before, you had to go to a Buddhist religious center to do this. But now, you go to the hospital, you go to a doctor. I've talked to many people, people that have chronic pain, they go to a doctor, and the doctor wants them to do mindfulness meditation. So in essence, it's like the doctor will tell you the same thing that 20, 30 years ago you would have got had you went to a cult. Okay, this is another very influential person, ABC News anchor Dan Harris. He was skeptical. He was, a regular scientific-based, secular type of a person. And he was introduced to meditation, and he started doing it. And now he wrote this book. By the way, both this and Huffington's book were on the New York Times bestseller list. And I think he's the anchor on ABC News on the weekend, right? And he also Nightline. He took over from Ted Koppel to do Nightline. So he is a good example of someone who before was skeptical, and now they're embracing and promoting mindfulness. And this is all over the world. This is a bookstore in Cork, Ireland, and that's where I was recently here a few weeks ago. And Cork is Ireland's second largest city, and in the bookstore there they had a whole table of books on mindfulness. And the clerk there said, "This is sweeping Ireland. This is the new thing. This is what everybody's doing." So even in Ireland, this is big. Okay, so somebody may say, "Come on, no, this is just focusing on your breath. This is just harmless." Okay, the Pocket Guide to Meditation says, through meditation we become attuned to spirit. Now, what is meant by spirit? That's a common term used in New Age books. This is the Beginner's Guide to Mediumship. How many of you know what mediumship is? That's, the Bible talks about mediumship, Deuteronomy 18. Okay, meditation is the key to unlocking the door of mediumship. For without meditation, there is no mediumship. Did you get that? Without meditation, there is no mediumship. A total and deep trance occurs when the mind is completely blank, when the mind chatter, that's thinking, your normal thoughts, has been overridden. If you continue the flow of uninterrupted trance, spirit contact and visions can occur, and they will occur. This is Ken Wilber. He's one of the major intellectuals in New Age spirituality. And he says, if you're doing meditation correctly, you're in for some very rough and frightening times. Meditation as a relaxation response is a joke. And again, this is from the Whitney Reader. It says, when a meditator is led to expect stress reduction and instead comes face to face with his true self, which would be a spirit guide, your inner divinity, your divine self, the result can be anything but relaxing. Are you starting to get the picture here, folks? Are you starting to understand? Okay, I could go on and on and on. I could do, a whole talk just on mindfulness, but this is in Time Magazine. This is Marty Kaplan. Marty Kaplan was a secular Jewish screenwriter. He didn't have a religious bone in his body, and he had a problem, though. He would bite his nails. So he went to his doctor, and his doctor introduced him to mindfulness meditation, just to calm him down so he wouldn't bite his nails. So he wrote in Time Magazine this article, Ambushed by Spirituality. He says, I got more from mind-body medicine, that's meditation, than I bargained for. I got religion. You don't have to believe in anything. All you have to do is do it. Okay? It ambushed me. You know what an ambush is? That means when you're walking down the road or whatever and somebody's waiting in the bushes and they kill you. It ambushed me. In other words, he wasn't expecting it. Unwittingly, I was engaging in a practice, meditation, that has been at the heart of religious mysticism for millenniums. Now I know there is a consciousness that transcends science, a consciousness toward which our species is sputteringly evolving. This guy became a New Ager just because he wanted to stop biting his nails. See, with the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses, they have to convince you intellectually that they have the truth. With this type of activity, with this thing, all you have to do is put yourself in a receptive state, and the familiar spirits do the rest. And all they have to do is get you into these meditative states, and then that makes you open. Okay, yoga. Here's one that's going to be very controversial, I'm sure. This is the second avenue that people are embracing familiar spirits through. We're going to see what yoga means. Okay, Okay, 250 million people practice yoga worldwide. That is a stunning number, and only 20 million of those are in the U.S. Yoga is everywhere. You go to Europe, you find yoga, as we'll see later on, in every little village. And yoga is now being, how many of you have noticed on television, they have a lot of commercials that contain things pertaining to yoga. How many have seen that? Oh, quite a few of you. Yeah, so yoga is now it's no longer considered unusual. It's now part of society. Yoga is not going to disappear anytime soon because things like this, there's this organization called Yoga Fit, and you can see that it has the connotation of fitness. And Yoga Fit has become the largest yoga school in North America and has trained some 200,000 instructors worldwide. Did you get that? Instructors, not people to do yoga, but have trained 200,000 teachers to teach people how to do yoga. That means of each one of these 200,000, just train 100 people a year, that's 20 million. So as you can see, yoga is going to continue to explode the way it has been. And here's the book, Yoga Fit, that we just saw that's based on this organization. And in it, the author says, the ancient practice of meditation is as integral, that means essential, to yoga as the poses are. See, a lot of people think yoga is just an exercise regimen. It's just, getting limber and has nothing to do with religion. But here she's saying that the meditation is as much a part of yoga as the poses are, and they have the same intention, not to tune out, but to tune in to a frequency long forgotten or perhaps undiscovered. So yoga is about tuning into a frequency. How many know who Andrew Weil is? He's the guy with the big bushy beard. Have you seen his magazines and books and things? He's a New Age doctor. And he says the poses, are not meant to be an end in themselves, since it is possible to become proficient at the postures without the more important job of learning to still the mind. So that's the real important part is meditation. And this is a book written by a proponent of yoga. He says, many people who are at first uninterested in meditation when they take up yoga practice gradually discover its value. Yoga's ultimate aim is spiritual health, not physical health. So how do they define spiritual health? Now, I would say that a lot of you here today are active in churches, right? You're pastors or Bible teachers, Sunday school teachers. How many of you are active in churches? Quite good, quite a few of you. So what I'm about to show you is how yoga defines spiritual health, and I'm sure that you're going to see right off the bat how this clashes with Christianity, how this is the total antithesis of the gospel. This is a book called Yoga and the Quest for the True Self, and everyone who writes about yoga would say the same thing. We are all born divine. This is the classic statement of the perennial philosophy of yoga. What we are seeking is already at the core of our nature. We are already inherently perfect. We are all inherently perfect. Well, you might say, well, we're inherently perfect, then why do we do all these bad things? Well, see, that's where the meditation comes in. You're not perfect now because you're not in touch with your inner divinity. That once you get in touch with your inner divinity, then you will be perfect. But the thing is, all these gurus, all these people that are in touch with their higher selves are still inherently perfect. Okay? It means that God is available fully at each moment simply because God is our true nature. God is and this is spiritual health, according to people in the yoga movement. This is the ultimate aim. How many of you know what the word yoga means? It means union. Yoga means union. And, of course, union with God. And at the beginning and end of most yoga classes, the teacher will put his or her hands together like this, and we'll go namaste to the class, and the class will go namaste back to her, and that means the God in me bows down to the God in you. So yoga means union. So there is union. There is union in yoga, but what kind of union? That's the big question. 250 million people doing yoga worldwide, so what are they in union with? Alice Ann Bailey is the woman who actually coined the term New Age, as a buzzword. She was a cultist who lived in the, early mid part of the 20th century and channeled 19 books on this coming new world religion, in the age of Aquarius, that would unite the world. And she talked about yoga. She said the yogi, or the one who has achieved union, for yoga is the science of union, knows himself as he really is in reality. He knows himself to be past all controversy, God. Past all controversy. And it gets worse. It gets worse. Aleister Crowley, known as the wickedest man in the world, during the same time frame as Alice Bailey. Aleister Crowley, many people consider him to be one of the chief Satanists, of the modern world. He was a practitioner and promoter of yoga. And he put out lectures on it. He practiced it, and he also taught on it. So why are these occultists involved in, promoting something that most people think is merely a health regimen or something to limber you up? Well, here we go. This is Arthur Ford. He was a famous medium, and he had a spirit guide for 43 years. And this is tragic. This is very tragic. It said that when he died, his last words were, "God help me," as he passed into the arms of his spirit guide. And I think at that moment he realized what a mistake he had made. But anyhow, he got into it through yoga. According to Ford, it was Swami Yogananda who first instructed him on how to meditate and how to enter a trance state by himself, which allowed him to make contact with the world of spirit. So in other words, he got this spirit guide through this Hindu Swami who taught him how to do yoga. Again, another famous occultist, John C. White, said, "Learning how to meditate was perhaps the most important event in my life. By doing meditation, yoga, or whatever you do as a discipline, you can set up your environment so the spirits can come work with you. The spirits can come work with you." Now you may think this is pretty radical, this is pretty far out, but it gets worse than this. What I'm about to show you now, if you were to tell your family members and friends and coworkers what I'm about to show you, they would think you were absolutely crazy. But this can be documented on the internet. Anybody can look up what I'm about to show you. Okay, remember, yoga means union. Okay, anyone still skeptical? I used to go to Borders when they were open. I used to go to Borders to the fitness section. And that's where you would find the books on yoga. There would be 5 shelves usually in the fitness section, and, where you'd find running and things like that, athletics. And I would look through these books on yoga in the fitness section, not in the religion section, but in the fitness section. And virtually all of them would reference to Hindu religious terminology. You would find chakras, you would find kundalini, you would find samadhi. Okay, there are 8 limbs to yoga. There are 8 elements to yoga. And the poses are only, I think, 4th or 5th. But the ultimate one, the 8th limb of yoga, is samadhi. And samadhi is, Dave Hunt used to talk about this. Back in the 1980s, he would use that term, samadhi, when talking about the New Age. And he would say it meant God consciousness. God consciousness. Now, Dave, I think he probably knew what was going on because yoga had exploded in the 90s and 2000s. I think he had seen what, I'm showing you now. But, this is supposed to be fitness, yet we're seeing Hindu religious terms. Okay, the chakras, especially, virtually every book on yoga would talk about the chakras. Okay, those are the energy centers in yoga. And we're going to see that another New Age practice is based on them, but every book on yoga would have the chakras. And in this book, The Pocket Guide to the Chakras, it says the 7th functions like a battery charger, renewing our connection with spirit. Again, that word spirit. They don't say the Holy Spirit, they just say spirit. Okay, beings on other planes are eager to communicate with you if you're willing to be receptive to them. So the chakra system is based on that there are these beings on other planes who want to connect with you. Okay, here we go. Here's the part that's really controversial, or people won't believe you. Okay, this is taken from a book, and it talks about the essence of yoga. It says, there's a whole chapter on this, and this is from this book. I'll show you after this. In meditation, the mysterious psychic energy can be sent up through these centers. This potent force is called the Kundalini, or serpent power. As the mighty force begins to flow within you, these vital psychic centers, the chakras, begin to open in successive order. Now, this is what you would find in most any book on yoga. If you were to show this to any yoga teacher, he or she would say, yeah, that's true. That's what it's all about. Well, I'm now going to show you where this was taken from. This is the book that this is from. And anyone can check this out on the internet. Anyone can, during the break or lunch hour, you can check this out, what I just showed you. And anyone can do the following. Okay, this is in the current issue of Yoga Journal. You can go to Fred Meyer, down here on 3rd Street, and go to the magazine section and look at the Yoga Journal, and you will find this. I think the article is called, what is it called? Power Shift? Yeah, Power Shift. Article is called Power Shift, and it talks about the chakras, and it talks about your sixth sense. Okay, the Ajna chakra, that's the third eye one, the Ajna chakra, helps you receive the wisdom that cannot be seen or heard by the ordinary senses. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is witchcraft. That is what witchcraft is all about. Now, if you think witchcraft is like something out of Hollywood, like something out of Rosemary's Baby or whatever, then people might be saying, well, no way, but this is the essence of witchcraft. These asanas, these postures, are merely meant to limber you up so you can meditate. As we just saw, it's not an end in itself. The real goal of yoga is to activate these energy centers so you can receive wisdom. See, in the Hebrew language, the word wizard means a knowing one. A knowing one. That's someone who has knowledge of these worlds, these supernatural worlds. So in essence, anyone who has opened these chakras is, in the Hebrew sense, a wizard. So somebody still may be skeptical. Well, this sounds too crazy to comprehend. Well, Jack Canfield, who did the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, him and Mark Victor Hansen, he was a nominal Catholic, decided to take yoga as an elective in college. Typical person, just a normal guy, raised Catholic, and they were offering yoga, and where he's going to college, and he took it. And it says that he had a spiritual awakening at a yoga class where he felt God flowing through all things, and that is samadhi. That is what we saw earlier. That is God consciousness, that God flows through all things, including you. God flows through you. And how many of you heard of the book Eat, Pray, Love? Okay, in that, Elizabeth Gilbert says that everything, including turnips and bed bugs, are God. Now, I know that sounds funny, but she's had the experience of turnips and bed bugs being God. It's not intellectual. It's this force comes down. Remember that picture? Meditation, this force comes down and possesses you. And only then do you really understand that you're God. A 2012 study indicates that 8.7% of U.S. adults, or 20 million people, practice yoga. Of current non-practitioners, 44% of Americans call themselves aspirational yogis, people who are interested in trying yoga. That's nearly half the adults out there are open to trying yoga, 44%. So that puts a whole new connotation on what we're looking at here this morning, right? I mean, if the whole, if practically, half the people turn to yoga, then and have the same experience as Jack Canfield, then we're looking at a radically changed society, a chakra-based society. And many mainstream religions are promoting this. This is U.S. Catholic. recent edition, 2013. And this is a mainstream Catholic publication. And it says, spiritual exercises, can they deepen your faith? You know, anyhow, it says, it's not that we're bringing a Hindu practice into the church. It's a spiritual practice that happened to be used by Hindus, but could easily be used by anyone, including Christians. Well, the problem is, this is a spiritual practice, but that's what makes them Hindus. You know, that's what makes them Hindus. So if you bring Hindu spiritual practices into the church, then it'll make you a Hindu. But this magazine says it will deepen your Catholic faith if you practice yoga. It deepens it, you know. So forces like, you know, the Berean Call are up against this huge tsunami of people that are saying that yoga is completely harmless or yoga is beneficial even. Now we're going to get into another one called Reiki. Again, Reiki is very widespread, especially in Europe. This is the third one that I'm speaking on this morning. This is a Japanese word, and this is really bizarre. You know, we've been looking at yoga and Kundalini energy and people doing mindfulness meditation and being ambushed by spirituality. Well, Reiki is a Japanese word, like I said, and it means spiritual energy, or it can be translated in many different ways. In Japan, Reiki is the generic word for the occult, you know, the generic word for it. But literally translated, it means spirit guide energy. The REI means like, it can also be translated ghost energy, because the REI means like spirits, ghosts, you know, entities, things like that. And the KI means energy. So Reiki healing, is where you go to someone and they've been initiated into this, and they put their hands on you and they channel this, same as a Kundalini energy, into you. And supposedly that, you know, heals you. And it's not religious. Usually Reiki is done in a non-religious environment. You don't go to the Church of Reiki, or it's not like your traditional Pentecostal healing services. It's, again, it's called spiritual but not religious. But as we can see, this is from their own sources, you know, again, we have connections with familiar spirits. During the Reiki attunement process, the avenue that is open within the body to allow Reiki to flow through also opens up the psychic communication centers. That would be the chakras. This is why many Reiki practitioners report having verbalized channel communication with the spirit world. Reiki guides are a group of discarnate, that means non-physical, healers that take part in every Reiki healing. Now, I want you to remember that. Not some, not many, but every Reiki healing. The Reiki 1 practitioner is probably not aware of them, but with Reiki 2, they begin to make themselves known. In Reiki 3, they are running the whole show, and that's the master level. This is Reiki News Magazine. The gentleman there that's doing it says, during every attunement ceremony, I am always aware of the presence of my Reiki guides. And let me see here. You may notice that one there. See? This person is right in our backyard. And she's very active. She says, I work with as many as 20 spirit guides during my Reiki treatments. They are my spiritual family. Many Reiki practitioners can feel the presence of their Reiki guides. So again, you know, you get this spiritual family. This woman says, Reiki once belonged to everyone. The Reiki guides want it to be so again. Okay, the popularity of Reiki. You know, at one time, before the 1970s, there was no Reiki in the U.S. You know, it didn't start until this woman came over, her name was Takata, I believe, came over from Hawaii and initiated 22 Reiki masters, and then it began to spread in the late 70s. Okay, this woman is a master is someone who initiates you into it. This woman was based in the Czech Republic. She's an American, but she went over and lived in the Czech Republic and started initiating people. This one master alone initiated 45,000 people into Reiki, but 43,000 of them were in Europe. She just went all over Europe initiating people. 43,000 in Europe. Just one master. According to the Reiki News magazine, 800 hospitals in the U.S., that's 15%, have a Reiki practitioner on staff. Now, St. Charles Hospital here in Bend is one of them. There are 8 Reiki masters who work with the cancer patients at St. Charles Hospital here in Bend. And based on my research, there are 500 to 700 Reiki channelers in Bend, or Central Oregon here. Okay, Reiki and day spas. In a Google search 5 years ago with the words day spa and Reiki, there were over 138,000 results. Today, there are over 2 million results. So it's grown that much. There are a lot of people that go to day spas, and they don't expect to be hit with something like this. You know, they expect to be, get pedicures and pampered and what have you. They don't expect that they're going to run into something along these lines. I remember I gave a talk down in the Sacramento area, and this woman who does brochures for businesses came up to me after the talk and said that 75% of the day spas that she did brochures for offered Reiki. Okay, Sandra Bullock, actress Sandra Bullock, wearer of Reiki-infused jewelry by Los Angeles designer and Reiki master Catherine Michaels. So Sandra Bullock is one of the people that's into Reiki. Riverdance. How many remember a show called Riverdance? Okay, the star of that was Michael Flatley, and I think he went on to become, do other things. But he says, I swear by Reiki that when he gets injured, he has someone do Reiki on him, his own personal Reiki channeler, and he's back and ready to dance just shortly after that. Okay, Dr. Oz, America's doctor. He said, on January 6, 2010, Dr. Mehmet Oz revealed his ultimate alternative medicine secrets for 2010 during his nationally broadcast afternoon talk show. He ranked Reiki number 1. Dr. Oz said, Reiki is one of my favorites. We've been using it for years in the Oz family, and we swear by it. And they better swear by it because his wife is a Reiki master. This is her book, Us, and in it she says, I am a certified Reiki master. The more I talk, the more my allergies torment me. I'm weak in the flesh, but I'm willing to go on for this information. Now, this is strange. This is really strange. A doctor in Kentucky sent this to me. This was... They were using a high school, not during the school season, but on a weekend to initiate people. But what blew me away, this is Franklin County Community Education. What blew me away was the fact that it said that it was sponsored by, let me see, sponsored by, I think you can see it right there. Sponsored by Franklin County Public Schools and the Kentucky Department of Education. Now, this is supposed to be the Bible Belt, folks. This is the Bible Belt. This isn't Berkeley, California. This isn't New York City or someplace like that. So why, probably many of you work for state, for government and schools, things like that. So why is, a public school being used to initiate people into an occult practice? This is really bizarre. The local high school, I think, you can see it here. Location, Western Hills High School. You see it right there? Oh, it's not. Oh, yeah, there we go. Western Hills High School right there. Raven Keyes is a major author and proponent in the Reiki. Now this picture, it looks like she's looking up at something, like she's receiving instructions from some kind of a entity, right? This is not a normal type picture. But she says that we all have, by the way, Dr. Oz wrote the foreword to her book, The Healing Power of Reiki. And this is what she says. He wrote the foreword to this. We all have a right to connect to our spirit guides. You have a right to. It's your right. Don't let anybody tell you you shouldn't do it, because we have a right to connect to our spirit guides. Every person interested in Reiki can make a personal connection with a guide. This is a spirit who is the overseer of your Reiki experiences and is invaluable to those of us who practice Reiki. Your Reiki master in spirit is a powerful being on whom you can depend. And we're going to look at, a lot of you here are probably here because you're interested in Bible prophecy, right? Right? Yes, Bible prophecy. Now, to me, I'm always building you up, aren't I? You haven't seen nothing yet. But to me, what I'm about to show you is very pertinent to all believers, all Christians who embrace Bible prophecy, because we're seeing validation of our beliefs from the other side. There was a teacher, a woman teacher in Portland, who injured her shoulder in a skiing accident, so she went to a Reiki channeler, and she wound up with an inner teacher, and she put this out, and I got it at a New Age or a bookstore in Portland, and this is what this inner teacher says, it's really a demonic spirit. This isn't her writing this. The booklet was called Attuning to Inner Guidance. And this spirit says, when the coming together time is here, you'll all slip into gear without much resistance to each other. That induction will come as a snap when enough of you are united in spirit. And that's what we're seeing right now, through all these different practices, through mindfulness, through yoga, through Reiki. All these people are being united in spirit with them, huge numbers, 26 million people, back in 2007. And this is being done because there's this spirit called a coming together time. That's up in the future somewhere. And when enough people are under their control, then this will happen. This coming together time will happen. Now, I personally believe that this coming together time is when the man of sin comes to power. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, when he comes on the scene, and all these spirit guides will have all these people under their control, then they will follow him. They will embrace him. And the Spirit says, you must be exactly where you are, doing exactly what you are doing. We, now did y'all catch that? We, not I, but we cannot stress how vital that is to the overall work that is happening in Portland and everywhere right now. Trust. And it gets worse. The master will guide. Do not have concern. It is all happening. Make inner guidance commonplace. Get it out there for the everyman. And that was 30 years ago. That was in the mid-'80s. It is now commonplace. It is now out there for the everyman. It has become commonplace. And then he gets personal, or it gets personal. I love you, Storma. Nothing is more important than to be a clear, resonating vessel to channel through the will of the universe. Trust in me, your Lord. So anyhow, getting back to that woman who had 20 spirit guides, they were her spiritual family. Remember her? She looked like a Baptist Sunday school teacher. And she says, this is fall 2013, just some months back. She says, today people of all religious and spiritual backgrounds practice Reiki. I have had Reiki students from a wide variety of religions. In one Reiki class, I had a Muslim, Hindu, Catholic, fundamentalist Christian, and agnostic. Fundamentalist Christian. My students are teachers, psychologists, healthcare professionals, nurses, doctors, veterinarians, massage therapists, horse and dog trainers, yoga teachers, engineers, biologists, firefighters, EMTs, soldiers, corporate executives, moms, dads, kids, you name it. What I have learned from my Reiki classes, clients and readers, is that we are the mainstream. And that's really the gist of what I'm trying to get across here, that mindfulness and yoga and Reiki are now the mainstream. In 2011, Presence Magazine, the official magazine of Spiritual Directors International, stated that there were now 2 million Reiki channelers in the United States. They went from 1 million in 2004 to 2 million in 2011. Now, to show you how many people that is the population of Oregon in 1970. In 1970, Oregon had 2 million people. And that's the number of Reiki channelers there were in 2011. Okay, Reiki in the UK. We're talking the UK now. And, okay, in the early to mid-1990s, Reiki was pretty much an unknown word in the UK. That's Great Britain, for those of you that don't know what the UK is. There were a few books on Reiki and in the major stores, and it had yet to be discovered in a meaningful way. From the year 2002, it would be difficult to find a village in the British Isles where there are not a number of Reiki practitioners. There has been an enormous proliferation, and it has been written about in all manner of publications, including the national press. Now, I have evidence of that. I'm going to show you evidence. This is in Ireland. There's this village way out, and you can see the arrow there. This village is located, 200 miles from Dublin. That would be the equivalent of like Burns or Klamath Falls from Portland, way out. And this is just a market village. It's called Skibbereen. So the people I was staying with, we were going to this Irish coastline, which is, as you can see, is nearby on the map. And we stopped there to find something to eat. We were just looking for a place to eat. And just within like a 2-block area, we found 3 places that did Reiki. Just there it says West Cork Holistic Therapies. 3 places that had Reiki. You can see there, right? Just walking around in a 2-block area in this little village, 200 miles from Dublin, the equivalent, like I said, of Burns, out in the middle of nowhere. And so we saw a little bookstore, and went in there, and right behind the cash register was this flyer for yoga. So they have Reiki, they have yoga, and they had this little section there, and there was no religion section. This thing that said positive living, and there was one book, I think on the top there, by a priest, Catholic priest, and all the other books were New Age books, including Neale Donald Walsh. For those of you who know who Neale Donald Walsh is, his book was there, Conversations with God under positive living. So, this town was saturated with familiar spirit activity. But I added this this is ironic here. This is supposed to be ironic, folks. As you're coming into Skibbereen, there's this shrine to Mary there. And on it says, Mary, Mother and Queen, we place this town and thus its people in thy keeping. So that kind of speaks for itself, right? Especially for those of you that are ex-Catholics. So Germany, I talked to a woman in Germany who had been a Reiki channeler for 20 years, and then she got saved. There are success stories. There are people that come out of it and get born again. And she said during those 20 years, she did Reiki on 500 people in Germany. And she did some research. She went online there and internet in Germany, and she said officially in Germany there were between 600 and 700,000 Reiki channelers. 600,000 to 700,000. And if you include Holland and Austria and Switzerland, it goes up to 1 million. So, and 15,000 masters, 15,000 people that can initiate you into it. So based on that, based on the proliferation of these kind of things in Germany, this is what you see in Germany. You see what's on his leg there? That's a Buddha. That's a tattoo of Buddha. And you see that everywhere. You see Buddhas everywhere in Germany. And generally, they're not connected with any kind of Buddhist organization or official manifestation of the Buddhist religion. It's like a cultural symbol now. Here we have a coffee bar. This is just nothing but a bistro, coffee bar there. And there's a Buddha on top of it. Now, the guy put the Buddha on top of that just to draw business, because people will see that and they'll think, wow, this guy's really cool. He's got a Buddha on his coffee bar. So they'll go there because they now resonate with Eastern mysticism. They now resonate with this type of mindset. So how do we respond? The man of sin could come to power now in Europe. Christianity in any form, even in Catholicism, has more or less been swept away in Europe and been replaced by things like Reiki and yoga and all sorts of mystical practices. So people like us are now a tiny remnant. We're like this little bitty minuscule force that stands against this. So how do we respond? Well, probably the chief verse that I would draw on is, regard not them that have familiar spirits. And that's what all this was about, familiar spirits. All these things, Reiki, from their own mouth. It's not like I just think they have familiar spirits. It's not like I'm just, I think these folks have familiar spirits, right? I've showed you the evidence, right? Tuning to inner guidance, Raven Keys there, you have these powerful beings, and they're Reiki master in spirit, and they're, we all have the right to our spirit guides. Dr. Oz wrote the foreword to that book. He wrote the foreword. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. See, when you're deceived like that and you believe you're God, you're defiled or corrupted. Psalm 39:5 says, verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity. So in other words, this yoga philosophy that we're all inherently perfect, we're all born divine, and everything is within. All you need is within you. That's the total opposite of what the Bible teaches. Everywhere in the Bible, that's the main theme of the Bible, is that man is, incapable of achieving any kind of spiritual perfection apart from the preaching of the cross. Excuse me. Paul wrote, I know nothing good dwells within me, that is in my flesh, or in his, I don't think he was talking about his physical body, but he was talking about his fallen nature. Paul calls that the flesh or the old man. Nothing good dwells within the old man. Nothing. And the New Age says just the opposite, that God dwells within you, as you. And this, of course, comes from Lucifer. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Notice he doesn't say, I will be the Most High. He says, I will be like the Most High. In other words, he'll have parity with God. He will be equal with God. So what it boils down to, I think mainly I wanted to just show you how pervasive this was and how this is not a fad. And like I said, I believe that the society in the Western world is turning into one huge cult. That everybody is going to be tied into this somehow. It's going to be institutionalized. It's going to be something that you can't really escape. And we're going to get into that tomorrow in the contemplative prayer aspect of this. So what we have here, though, is the preaching of the cross versus the preaching of the higher self. Deepak Chopra, one of the major writers in New Age spirituality, in his book, The Third Jesus, says, if there is such a thing as God consciousness, that's samadhi, no one can be excluded from it. See, you can be as sinful as you can be the worst person in the world. You can be totally corrupt. You can, murder and torture children, and you're still connected to God consciousness. You can never be apart from God. Okay, so that shows that morality is not an equation in all this. And that's one of the things that set Judaism and Christianity apart from all the pagan religions. There was no morality in these other, like the Romans, they had gods and goddesses, but their favorite sport was, the gladiatorial games, and in the arena there in the Colosseum, people killing each other. There was no morality. For if, when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. See, if you're already God, then you don't need to be reconciled by the death of Jesus, right? You don't need it. If you're God, then all you have to do is reach samadhi. All you have to do is meditate and connect with your God self, and that is the goal. That is salvation. That is what yoga is all about, union. But we believe that we're reconciled to a personal God by the death of his Son. Romans 5:10. The whole New Testament is filled with it. 1 Corinthians 1:18. For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. Amen? I want to hear a hearty amen. Amen. There you go. Unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. The power of God is not Kundalini. It is not the chakras. It is not the serpent force. It is not Reiki. It is the preaching of the cross. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. I don't have to I don't have to go into this very much. It's obvious. I mean, all of you here, I would believe, are grounded in the Scriptures to a large degree. And you can see what I've showed you is the mortal enemy of the gospel. There are other things. There's atheism, there's cults, there's many agnosticism, hedonism, secularism, materialism. But what we see here is that the mystical aspects of Eastern religion, Hinduism, Buddhism, and then Wicca, the Western occult tradition, have now come to the surface and are spreading everywhere. And I believe this is being done to, as Dave Hunt pointed out in his numerous books, this is being done to prepare the world for the rise of the man of sin. And anybody who doubts that is in very, very serious trouble. Okay, thank you very much.